call it. Let's never again call it yuppie flu.
Right.
That has been the most ridiculous thing. That's like saying Legionnaire's disease. The only people who get Legionnaire's disease are legionnaires. Okay. Or the gay plague. I mean, you know how damaging that is.
We're clearly identifying something here.
I'm not absolutely sure of that, because if you read the literature on the clinical aspects of the ME, some of Peter Behan's writings, for instance, and a chap called Jay Goldstein in Southern California, the lists of symptoms are interminable. Well, that is not
the whole point.
Now, I've just made the point that a proportion of people with ME have, definable neurological deficits. Well, now, I would argue that some of those, at least, I'd hesitate to put a figure on it, but in the case of young women, I would think up to a quarter, are suffering from mild and sometimes not so mild multiple sclerosis. And for entirely understandable emotional reasons, they're not prepared to confront that rather frightening diagnosis.
Well, as I
now,
understand
I have got firm laboratory as well as clinical evidence in the three-figure cohort of patients I'm studying currently who fit into that category, and in fact, two of them, as I was telling one of the ladies, in fact, our friend here, in fact, Andrea, before the program, two of them are now pre-terminal and are very, very badly disabled with what is clearly multiple sclerosis.
I'm mortified that you should say that, a certain amount with multiple sclerosis. My daughter's 12, and she's going to get into her head now. Well, I haven't got ME, I haven't got this virus thing, I've got multiple sclerosis.
I'm not suggesting for a moment that it applies to your daughter, obviously.
It has shocked her.
You mentioned Peter Behan there. He's developed...
Dr. Peter, come on, you're talking to the daughter.
It hasn't shocked me because I know it's not true, because ME is a virus in itself. It's not multiple sclerosis at all.
Well, there is almost certainly more than one virus involved in the causation of ME, I would argue.
Whatever it is, Nicky, whatever it is, how do you treat it?
Well, I mean, I don't believe there is a treatment.
I mean, as you say, you gave your wife's got it. You've given up your job as a
temporarily.
Oh, temporarily.
I've got to make a living.
But how do you deal with it? How do you treat it?
Well, there is no treatment. I believe there's no cure. It just goes out the back door as stealthily as it came in the front. I believe eventually. I believe it's living with it. It's coping with it as best you can. Pray God. I mean, my wife at the moment is not in a wheelchair. I don't know if she's in the early stages and it's going to get worse. I don't know what's going to happen. But right now she's pretty bad. She needs all the love and attention that she can get. So it's stress-free, a stress-free environment. On a completely mundane level, making sure that she doesn't have to go into the kitchen, have to cook a meal, all that sort of stuff, as stress-free as possible. And of course, it hurts all the more because she was a golfer, a tennis player, running her own business.
Is that the doctor's prescription too? What Nicky has just said. That's his prescription for his wife. Is that what a doctor would prescribe to deal with the illness?
I think a doctor who understands ME would prescribe freedom from stress and rest in the first year. What's critically important is that people get diagnosed early on and can take the appropriate rest, mental and physical, have a much, much better chance of recovering. I'm very concerned about a number of children who've been mismanaged early on in the illness, forced to go back to school, forced to do sports at school, forced to do things, perhaps forced to do exercise programs before they're ready for it. And these are the children who deteriorate and actually become paralyzed. There is no treatment, there's no magic bullet, there's no magic drug. There are drugs that can help with some symptoms like painkillers or antidepressants where appropriate. All people with ME have an innate potential to get better if they're allowed
Okay, I've come to you and you've told me, right Robert, what you've got to do, take a year off, rest, be stress-free. Be stress-free, that'd be wonderful. But I don't like that, I'm going for a second opinion.
Well, I'm going along with Anne's views there as far as self-help is concerned. It's extremely important to rest in the early stages when you've had this viral infection, you're knocked off, to then start to mobilise yourself. We don't want people to either go to bed and stay there, because that's bad for them, and we don't want people to try and force themselves out of it. They've got to try and create this balance. But I must go back to what Peter, our neurologist here, was saying, because he's on one end of a neurological spectrum. There are other neurologists who do believe this is a neurological disease. It has been classified by the World Health Organization.
What do you mean by that? In layman's terms, are you saying that's a mental illness?
No, it's a disease, an organic disease affecting the brain. I mean, I've got some scans here from the Annals of Internal Medicine. Don't know whether Peter's seen those. These are MRI scans of the brain. We have a lot of research now going on into hypothalamic function. I don't know whether he's read that or not. And I think this may be a key part of the illness. There's a tiny little gland within the brain that controls energy, temperature control, a whole range of body functions, including hormones.
How do we treat it?
from the doctor's point of view, we've got to pursue this research. We've got to pursue the research.
Well, that's really helpful to me. I've come to you with this problem. You say, oh, it's okay, I've got to pursue the research. Doctor, put your research away, doctor.
Put the research away.
Get your pen and your prescription pad
We've got to look at what perpetuates this illness. We've got to look at 4 factors. We've got to look at evidence for virus persisting or a virus being reactivated in the body. Disturbances in the way the immune system is reacting to a persistent virus. Disturbances in the muscle, disturbances in the brain.
I'm a patient, doctor. I don't want to know all this. I just want to...
Yeah, but as a patient with ME, you do want to know all this. Patients with ME desperately want the medical profession to carry out this research. It's not being done.
I want to know...
Found. We want the answers found. I agree with Dr. Joshua. We want the answers found. Just because the answers aren't here now doesn't mean to say, oh, we give up. We need research. Just because there's no magic test for ME now doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And I would have thought that with a persistent, I'm not a doctor, but with a persistent viral infection, any viral infection, gives rise to many different symptoms. We know that, but we've had flu in the past, don't we?
How do you treat it, Mike?
This is why so many people who have ME or fatigue syndrome or any of the other names you want to give it end up looking for alternative treatments. That's why they get fed up with the doctors. And the fact of the matter is that I think we have 2 very different viewpoints here. I think we have, firstly, the patient who has it, who wants to know what they can do.
I'm the patient. I want to know.
I know what to do.
I want to be told they're doing all the wonderful research. Of course, but we're acting now. I want to go home. Being told.
We would not be told. What you don't want to be told, Robert, is that you are a depressive, take the antidepressants. The psychiatrists are trying to hijack this illness. Now, I have to say, firstly, the psychiatrists have had a pretty bad press over the last few years. And they're looking for something reputable. And they are trying to hijack this illness and say it is totally a psychiatric illness. Now, in my practice as a complementary therapist, I have seen many, many people for many years with ME or its likes. Some of them, I am convinced, do not have ME. Some of them use it as a cover for anorexia, as a cover for bulimia, as a cover for behavioral disturbances. No, some of them have illnesses like MS which have to be diagnosed, which is why the ME patient must be screened by a proper medical screening process. But the trouble with most GPs is they are what the profession calls heart sink patients. The patient walks in and your heart sinks. Oh, God, it's one of those.
Is that how you react, doctor? Oh, it's one of those.
No, I don't. I mean, I think what's interesting about this discussion so far is the 2 doctors have said, yes, it's ME, have given you no treatment for your condition.
I'm the one that keeps asking for the treatment, but actually being told, wait for the research, Robert.
Well, exactly. I prefer, and I'm more interested. I am a psychiatrist, and psychiatrists are not trying to hijack this illness, and no psychiatrist that I know thinks this is a purely psychological disorder and is all in the mind. All the psychiatrists that I work with...
How much, then?
All in the mind. Just give me a chance, Nicky, if I may, please.
Not purely in the mind. How much is in the mind?
I don't think it is all in the mind. Indeed, I don't think any mental illness is all in the mind. I go that far. My approach is actually to say, well, if you say you've got ME, that means you've got a persistent viral infection or an immune dysregulation. There is nothing you can do and nothing your doctor can do. That is a counsel of despair for the patient who's ill now. Fine, wait for the research to come on later. Fine to wait for the research to find the cure. I suspect there won't ever be the cure for ME. My approach, if I may please, Nicky, finish what I do for my patients. My approach is far more pragmatic. I express ignorance. It's not conspiracy of the doctors, it's ignorance. We don't know the answer to ME.
That's honest.
And therefore my approach, absolutely, well, it's ignorance. It's not actually conspiracy. And therefore my approach is purely pragmatic. I look for what is wrong with my patient. Whether that is physical or psychological, I don't care. Whether that's cause or effect, I don't care. If they have that problem, whether it's depression, whether it's sleep problems, whether it's physical deconditioning, which can be extremely severe, I treat the whole lot at the same time. And blow me down, what happens to my patients? They tend to get better. And I'm not worried about what is cause and effect. Treat what you find is the secret to this illness.
I'm sorry, this business about getting better, there is... As with any illness, as with any serious illness, there are degrees of sufferers, and there are the people who, like my daughter, who are laying there day in, day out, who I had to sit and hold her hand last night because she is physically, and she's not imagining these multitude of symptoms.
How do you think she is either?
And she's seen psychiatrists, believe me, she's seen psychiatrists, and again she was told in the beginning, it's in the